Have you ever felt that you carry a strength that the world insists on labeling as an exaggeration? That their sensitivity, their depth, their love are seen as too much intensity by those who only know how to love halfway? Perhaps you've learned to be silent, to diminish yourself, to hide your soul, just so as not to frighten those who don't know what to do with so much genuine feeling. But Rumi already said, "You were born with wings. Why do you prefer to crawl through life?" And you tried to fly, you tried to be whole, you tried to love with presence, to look with truth, to live with soul. And what did they tell you? That you feel too much, that you demand too much, that you're too intense. But the truth, my dear, is that they don't know what to do with your truth, because its intensity is not weight, it is light, and light frightens those who still live in the shadows. You learned to carry the label of difficult, exaggerated, too emotional, when all you did was love without pretense. You are not an exaggeration. You are essence. You don't speak loudly. You say what many keep silent about. You don't demand too much. You just don't accept less than you deserve. And the world isn't used to that. The world applauds those who adapt, those who smile even when wounded, those who hide inside. But you are a naked soul. You weren't born to fit in. You came to overflow. Maybe that's why they call you intense, because they cannot withstand the force of his presence, because their pain screams truths they are not yet ready to hear, because their delivery reveals how much they still live on the surface. The truth is, its intensity is a mirror, and mirrors bother those who avoid looking at themselves. What they call too much of you is exactly what you hold most sacred. Don't be silent. Don't hide. Don't turn your soul into a draft just because the other person doesn't know how to read poetry. You are a whole word. You are a verse in flames. Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But what if your light is exactly what others avoid seeing? Maybe the problem was never you. Perhaps, just perhaps, the world still hasn't learned to love intense women. But that is about to change. So before we continue, take a deep breath. Feel with your soul what is being said here. This is not just another video, it's a mirror, a call to action, a space where your truth will not be judged, it will be welcomed. If this has touched you deeply, leave a comment below. I'm not too much. I'm genuine. I read every comment. Every word you say is part of this collective healing. If this message resonated with you, please leave a like. This shows YouTube and the universe that this kind of truth needs to be heard by more people. Subscribe to the channel now, because this journey is only just beginning, and you won't want to walk that path back to yourself alone. You've tried to explain yourself so many times already. He tried to soften how he felt, to measure his words, to hide the brightness, to lower his voice. Not because you wanted to hide, but because at some point, someone convinced you that being who you are would be too much for others to bear. You began to believe that your pain needed to be silenced, that your love needed to be rationed, that your intense presence was a mistake to be corrected. But here's a truth that no one has ever had the courage to tell you. It's not that you feel too much, it's that they feel too little. There is an invisible problem that no one talks about, an emotional wound that doesn't bleed on the outside, but corrodes from the inside. It's the burden of living in a society that teaches women to restrain themselves, to please, to fit in. The world wasn't made to accommodate intense women. It was made to domesticate them, to mold their truths into more palatable forms, to transform your soul into surface, your love into strategy, your intuition into doubt. And that's where the conflict arises. Because while the world demands lightness, you deliver presence. While they ask for silence, you offer living words. While they're playing, you can feel it. While they shy away from taking the plunge, you've already drowned 100 times. And yet you keep coming back to love. This is the invisible pain. The pain of being profound in a time that values shallowness. The pain of living in a world that celebrates those who are the best at pretending. The pain of offering your soul where only appearances are accepted. Perhaps that's why you feel tired. Not only because of what she went through, but because of what she had to hide. How much of your essence did you have to prune in order to keep someone close? How many times have you kept quiet so as not to seem too sensitive, too needy, too intense? But Rumi said, what you're looking for is looking for you. And maybe, just maybe, you haven't yet found people who truly know how to see you. Because you have been searching where your soul is not recognized. And the soul, it knows when it's not welcome. The problem isn't your love, because he's too genuine for those who only know how to love through filters. It's too spiritual for those who still live in fear. It's too deep for those who aren't ready to delve into their own shadows. And that depth that made you feel excluded is precisely the key that connects you with the divine. Rumi also said, "Don't settle for stories of how things happen to others. Awaken your own legend. And to awaken, you need to stop trying to be understood by those who are still asleep. There is nothing wrong with you. There is intensity. There is truth to it. There is a presence. And that's exactly what's frightening. You see what others ignore. You can sense what others are hiding. You touch on wounds that others mask with distractions. And when you speak up, they get annoyed. Not because you're wrong, but why do you force them to see each other without their masks? And not everyone is ready for that kind of mirror. This is the root of the invisible problem. You live in a sensitive body, but with an ancient soul. A soul that has seen too much, felt too much, fallen and rebuilt itself in silence. A soul that no longer accepts being erased in order to be loved. That it will no longer hide in order to fit in. But the world doesn't understand that. And when he doesn't understand, he rejects it. He's accusing you. It labels you. He calls you intense as if it were a flaw. But what they call intensity is simply their soul refusing to be diminished. You are not alone. And if, upon hearing this, a part of you trembled, if any old memories came to mind, if you felt that someone finally put into words what you were never able to explain, then write it in the comments. I feel too deep to live on the surface. That is your truth, and she will no longer be silenced. You started to believe you were wrong because you always felt too much. But what no one ever explained to you is that your pain, the one that silently accompanies you, is not a weakness. It is sacred. There is a spiritual root to everything you feel, a deeper origin for this intensity that runs through you. You are not this way by chance. You were shaped by falls, honed by silences, forged by the absence of those who should have embraced you, but turned their backs on you. The world asks you to be lighthearted. But what kind of lightness is it that ignores the soul? What kind of lightness is this that demands smiles while your heart is bleeding inside? The truth is that the lightness the world demands is often an escape. It's an invitation to disconnect from yourself, to not bother anyone, to not feel. But her soul, it wasn't born to be anesthetized. You feel it because you are alive. You feel it because you are awake. And while many still live numbed by ego, chasing after validation, you have been called to look within. And what you saw, no one prepared you to deal with it. You realized that your intensity, the very thing that so many condemn, is actually the most authentic expression of your soul. She is not a mistake. She is your gift. But it's a gift that's frightening, because it reveals. And everything that is revealed disturbs those who have become accustomed to hiding it. Do you want to know why you're suffering so much? Because its soul is ancient. Because you feel what's behind the words. You perceive what is left unsaid. You read silences. You grasp truths that no one dares to confess. And for many, that's extremely inconvenient. It's like turning on a light in a room where everyone was comfortable in the darkness. Rumi said, "The soul always knows what to do to heal itself. The challenge is to silence the mind. And your mind has been trained to make you doubt yourself. She was programmed to think it's crazy to feel so much, that it's weakness to care too much, that it's neediness to want depth. But his soul was never confused. She always knew you came here to live with presence, to dive deep where others only get their feet wet, to transform pain into healing, wounds into light, silence into truth. Perhaps your pain isn't from feeling too much, but from being surrounded by people who feel too little. Perhaps your pain is the call your soul has been making for years and which you've tried to ignore in order to fit in. But now, you're listening. You know that emptiness that insists on appearing even when everything seems to be fine? It's not a flaw of yours. It's the echo of your soul saying, "This isn't for me." Work that suffocates, relationships that wither, superficial conversations, relationships lacking presence. None of that feeds your soul. Because your soul doesn't feed on convenience, it feeds on truth. And your truth is that intensity that you carry in your heart. It is this love that overflows without asking permission. It is this pain that refuses to be swept under the rug. It's that desire to truly heal, Not with ready-made phrases, but with deep dives. You've already realized this. And that's why you're here. Because somewhere deep inside you, there's a silent certainty that your pain has a purpose. This discomfort, this longing for something you can't even name, this restlessness of the soul, it's all part of a larger process. And no, you're not going crazy. You are waking up. You're letting go of trying to fit in and starting to remember who you really are. You are taking off the masks one by one. You are looking at yourself with more compassion. You are crying where you used to be silent. She's saying no, where before she accepted everything. This is the spiritual root of its intensity. She is not just emotion. She is ancient wisdom. She is living consciousness. She is your soul trying to show you the way back home. So the next time someone calls you intense, breathe. Look into that person's eyes, even if it's in silence. And know this, she is only seeing a reflection of what she doesn't yet have the courage to access within herself. You didn't come here to please. You came to awaken. And awakenings almost always begin with pain. If this resonated with any part of you, if it brought a warmth to your heart, an old memory, a tear you'd been holding back, write it in the comments below. My intensity is the language of my soul. You've spent your life trying to understand why your relationship seemed to crumble just when you were showing your best. Your purest love, your most complete presence. You gave yourself with soul, body, and truth. But for some reason the other person would drift away, disappear, shut down, and you would start to wonder, am I loving the wrong way? Or worse, is the problem me? But what if I told you that the problem was never the way you love, but rather the reflection that your deep love generates in those who do not yet love themselves? What no one told you is that your love, when it's true, becomes a mirror. And mirrors show what many spend their entire lives trying to avoid. Their love laid bare the other's escapes, the unhealed traumas, the voids he tried so hard to hide. Because their devotion was extraordinary. It wasn't about self-interest, it was about soul. And that's scary, because it demands presence. It demands courage. And not everyone is ready to shed their own defenses. You began to feel that the more you loved, the more rejected you felt. Not because you were actually being rejected, but because the other person didn't know what to do with your depth of love. You delivered the truth, and he only knew how to play games. You showed him open wounds, and he only knew how to live with masks. You wanted connection, and he only knew distraction. And that hurt you, not because of neediness, but because your soul recognized the power of that encounter. And yet, it was wasted. This is the hidden key that no one teaches. That your pain doesn't stem from the intensity of your love, but from the other person's resistance to receiving it. You don't suffer because you love too much. You suffer because you offer love where fear still exists. You suffer because you touch where no one has ever dared to touch before. You suffer because you see where the other person still insists on hiding. And when his gaze meets the wound that the other never had the courage to heal, he runs away. It doesn't run away from you. Run away from yourself. But since you are the reflection, you are the one who ends up bearing the weight of the rejection. Rumi said, "The wound is the place through which the light enters you, and you became light. But the other still lives in the darkness of their own denial. You showed him what he didn't want to see, and he called you intense, as if that justified the fear he felt in the face of your authenticity. Her pain stems from being genuine in a world that has specialized in pretending. You truly feel it, you truly speak it, you truly desire it, but the world has become accustomed to compromise, to convenience, to performance, and then you become a nuisance. You disrupt things, because you don't enter a relationship to fill a space. You come in to overflow, to create bonds that touch the soul. And for many, that's still too frightening. That's why they call you intense, because they don't know how to say, I'm not ready for that depth yet. Because it would be easier to reduce you to a label than to admit that you revealed truths that he himself avoids looking at. Because it would be more comfortable to push you away than to accept the challenge of transforming alongside you. And you, without understanding, began trying to adapt. Editing began. She began hiding parts of herself, hoping to finally be accepted. But the more you faded into the background, the less you recognized yourself, and the pain only got worse. Because there is no greater pain than denying one's own essence in exchange for crumbs of affection. But that hidden key is now in your hands. And with it, you can start to change everything, not conforming to fit in. But remember that your presence is healing, and that not everyone is ready to heal. You are a mirror that reflects truths, and truths are uncomfortable, but they are also liberating. You no longer need to wonder why they didn't stay. They didn't stay because their love demands their presence, and presence is rare. It's a gift. It's a calling. You're not here to be accepted by everyone. You are here to be whole, and whoever has the courage to look in the mirror and see who they truly are will stay. He's going to dive in. It will grow with you. So now, when you feel that pain of being rejected once again, remember this. You were not rejected. You were too truthful for a world that still fears the truth. If this made sense to you, write it in the comments. My love is a mirror that reveals what can no longer be ignored. Perhaps you've experienced exactly that, so silently that you didn't even have time to name it. You were there, believing you had finally found someone capable of diving into the same depths that you carry in your gaze. The connection felt different, perhaps even sacred. The way he looked at you, the way he spoke words that pierced your body and went straight to your soul. You believed it, and for a moment, you allowed yourself to lower your defenses. You opened your world, showed your memories, talked about the traumas that almost swallowed you alive. You were transparent even though you were afraid. You were brave enough to be vulnerable even knowing the risks. And in that moment, something inside you said, now, yes, now I am being seen. But gradually, something changed. Presence turned into absence. Enthusiasm turned to silence. The answers became shorter, the gazes more distant, and you started to wonder what you did wrong. Perhaps she went over all the conversations again. Tried to remember if it was too intense, if she talked too much, if she felt too much. Perhaps you've decided that next time, you'll control yourself more. You won't give in so quickly. You'll hide your emotions. Smile even when you're falling apart inside. But the truth is you didn't do anything wrong. You simply revealed your soul to someone who didn't even know where they kept their own. You emotionally bared yourself in front of someone who never took off their own masks. And that scared him. He said he wanted someone genuine, that he was looking for connection, depth, and reciprocity. But when you showed him exactly that, he backed down, and you thought the mistake was yours. But what if, deep down, he never really wanted to find someone like you? What if he only liked the idea of an intense woman, but not the reality of living with her? Because the intense woman questions. She feels it. She demands presence, truth, commitment. She doesn't accept crumbs. She doesn't play the waiting game to seem more interesting. She doesn't play hard to get. She's genuine. It's true. For those who only live for appearances, it's a threat. So yes, maybe he would say he loved you. Perhaps I even believed it, for a while. But love isn't what you feel when everything is easy. Love is what endures when the other's soul is fully revealed. You revealed yourself completely, and he ran away. Not because you went too far, but because he was too small. This is one of the most common experiences that intense women go through. They attract attention, fascinate with their depth, and awaken curiosity. But when the soul begins to speak, when silence begins to carry meaning, when love ceases to be fleeting lightness and becomes a mirror, the other cannot bear it, because its truth disarms, and many prefer to remain armed. Its intensity is an invitation to dive in, but many are still afraid of their own depth. They want warm, safe, shallow water. You are the ocean. You are both storm and calm at the same time, and that requires courage. How many times have you wondered if you needed to be less? How many times have you felt that your presence pushed people away when all you wanted was to offer comfort? How many times have you thought that you needed to love more slowly, feel with less intensity, hide your tears, control your impulses? But now you might be starting to understand that the problem was never you. You were simply living surrounded by people who didn't understand the language of your soul. You spoke from the heart, and they only understood logic. You offered healing, and they were addicted to the chaos. You were real, and they were characters. And even though it hurts, even though you've cried because you weren't chosen, because you weren't enough for someone, at some deeper level, you were too much only for those who were already too little. Because for someone who is awake, whole, and healed, their intensity will not be a burden. It will be a gift. Your soul, when recognized, will find rest. But until that encounter happens, you need to continue being who you are, even if it seems lonely, even if others don't understand. You weren't made to hide. You were made to shine, and true light blinds the eyes of those who have not yet learned to see. So the next time you blame yourself for being too much, remember this: you were exactly what you needed to be, and the other one simply didn't know what to do with so much love. Because true love doesn't just please, it transforms, and not everyone wants to be transformed. If any part of you recognized yourself in this, if you remembered someone or some situation that still hurts, write it here in the comments. He didn't run away from me. He ran away from the truth I carried with me. There comes a moment, inevitable, silent, and overwhelming, when the pain of hiding becomes greater than the fear of rejection. A moment when you, for the first time, question whether it's really worth continuing to prune yourself, diminish yourself, edit yourself, just to remain accepted by people who have never seen you for who you are. You begin to realize that every time you silence your feelings to please others, something inside you also falls silent. And this silence, which at first seems like protection, gradually transforms into a prison. You look back and see how many times you stopped being who you were to be what others expected of you. How many times have you given up your truth to maintain a relationship? How many times did she hide her tears, swallow her screams, smile while crumbling inside? All this so as not to seem too difficult, too needy, or too emotional. But today, something has changed. Something inside you refuses to continue living by this script. You start to question the price you've paid to be accepted, and he discovers that he's been going too far. His peace, his identity, his freedom. This is where the shift in consciousness begins. That exact moment when you realize that your intensity isn't a flaw, it's your signature. It is how your soul manifests itself in the world. It's the way you love, feel, create, intuit. It is her lively and vibrant presence that breaks through the grayness that so many have learned to normalize. Rumi said, "Don't shrink yourself to fit into other people's worlds. Expand yourself until you remember who you are." And perhaps what you need most right now is to expand. Expanding my chest to take a deep breath after years of hunching over to fit in. To open your heart to feel truthfully, without apologizing for it. Expand your soul to occupy the space that is rightfully yours, and no longer the space that others have allowed you to occupy. Its intensity, the very intensity that so many have tried to diminish, is the exact language of its awakened soul. She is the flame that moves you, even when everything around you seems cold. It's the lighthouse that guides you, even when the world insists on leaving you in the dark. And no, not everyone will understand. Many will continue to be bothered by her brilliance, her complete presence, her unreserved dedication. But you need to understand, whoever is bothered by your light has probably become too accustomed to their own shadow. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to live in truth with those who have the courage to truly meet you. And it doesn't start when someone accepts you. It starts when you accept yourself. When you stop comparing yourself to other women who seem easier, lighter, more normal. When you understand that there is no such thing as normal for a soul that came into the world to break patterns. You are not like the others, and that is precisely why you are special. An intense woman isn't for everyone. It's for those who have courage. The courage to feel, to dive in, to evolve. She's not looking for lukewarm relationships. She wants soul to soul, presence with presence, a path with depth. And when you begin to live that truth, something magical happens. Rejection doesn't hurt like it used to, because you come to understand that the other person didn't reject you. They just weren't ready. You begin to look at the past with compassion and at the future with conviction. You begin to understand that each no you received pushed you further inward, closer to herself, more towards the center of their own power. And in this center, you'll find something that no one can take away from you: authenticity, wholeness, Alma. This change doesn't happen all at once. It's subtle. It starts when you respond differently, when you choose silence instead of a tired explanation, when you decide to leave instead of begging to stay, when you prioritize your own peace over the approval of others. You start to become more yourself, and the more you change, the less you accept going back to being who you were. You feel there is no more room for negotiation with your essence. There is no more room to erase in order to be chosen, because now, the choice is yours, and you choose to live with soul, with presence. That's true, even if it hurts, even if it's scary, because this pain is the birth of someone who is being reborn within themselves, and being reborn is scary, but staying where you don't belong hurts much more. If any part of your soul is feeling this right now, this silent urge to remember, to expand, to break free, write it here in the comments. My intensity is my return to myself. You spent so much time trying to soften your essence so that it would fit within other people's expectations that at some point you began to doubt your own truth. She began to wonder if she really needed to soften her voice, disguise her eyes that speak volumes, hold back the tear that insisted on falling when her soul spoke. He learned to moderate the intensity of his feelings, like someone learning to walk while afraid of making noise. But every time you diminished yourself, something inside you also faded away. But there comes a point, and perhaps you're exactly at that point right now, when it's just not possible anymore. You can't be anything less than who you are anymore. It's no longer possible to romanticize relationships that make you sick, to pretend that everything is okay when your soul is screaming for space, for truth, for breath. The truth, your truth, is overflowing, and you can no longer contain it. And this is where liberation begins. You don't need everyone to accept your truth. It doesn't need to be understood, fitted into, or validated. His truth was not meant to please. It was made to set free. And she starts doing that. First to you. You begin to realize that there is strength in the tear that falls when no one is watching. There is wisdom in the words you've had to swallow for years. There is power in feeling everything that others avoid. And being intense was never the problem. The problem was not understanding what to do with that intensity. But now you understand. Your intensity is your compass. She points to what matters, reveals what is false, and exposes what is out of alignment. And even if it bothers you, even if it hurts, even if it puts you on a collision course with the comfort of others, it is sacred, because it's true. Rumi said, "The soul has its own path and it does not go astray." And your soul is leading you to a place where you no longer negotiate with your silence, a place where you speak clearly, feel deeply, and allow yourself to be seen completely. Because you understood, the love you deserve is the one that recognizes your light, not the one that asks you to extinguish its shine. You've been with people who said they loved you, until the moment your truth came out, and the moment she emerged, raw, strong, authentic, they walked away. Because true love is different from admiring from afar. Loving someone intensely requires courage. Courage to deal with mirrors, with storms, with depths. And perhaps that's why you've spent so much time alone, feeling wrong, isolated, strange. But now he's beginning to see that his loneliness wasn't rejection. It was protection. Your soul was protecting you from shallow loves, empty encounters, and relationships that only took up space. She was waiting for something worthy. A love that could withstand the weight of her light. Because its light does indeed have weight. It weighs heavily on those who still carry too many shadows. It's hard for those who are used to hiding, to controlling, to keeping everything predictable. Its light is not gentle. It is transformative. And transformation is frightening. But those who are ready don't run away. Those who are awake draw near. Those who are in the process surrender. Your truth doesn't have to fit into other people's narratives. It needs to fit you. She needs to be yours. No editing, no justification, no fear. And when you live your truth, you align yourself with something greater than any external acceptance. You begin to attract what is compatible with your vibration. You start to see doors opening where before there were only walls. Start living from the inside out. And living like that is something else entirely. It's lighter. It's denser. It's more you. You understand that you're not here to adapt. It's here to expand, for inspiration, to show that there is another way to exist in the world, a more honest, deeper, more spiritual way. And no, that doesn't mean the pain will go away. It simply means that it will have a purpose, that it will transform into language, on a bridge, in healing, not just for you, but for anyone willing to listen. Because your voice heals, his gaze heals. His silence, when it comes from the soul and not from fear, heals. You are healing. But you can only heal others when you begin to heal yourself. And this healing begins with allowing yourself to be who you are, whole, intense, present. If you're feeling this right now, if some part of you saw itself reflected in the mirror that truth offers, if any tears appeared without warning, write it here in the comments. My truth will no longer bend. You've spent so much time trying to be understood that you may have forgotten to listen to what's most important, the call of your soul. She never asked you to be accepted by everyone, to please, to fit in. She just wants you to be whole. And every time someone called you intense, something inside you shrank, not because of the word itself, but because it always came loaded with judgment, as if intensity were excess, as if intensity were a flaw. But now, perhaps for the first time, you're starting to see that word in a new light. Being intense is, in fact, a sign that your soul refuses to live on autopilot. It's a sign that something within you awakens each time you encounter superficiality. It's a sign that you weren't born to live life halfway, and you'll never be able to pretend otherwise again. This awakening is subtle. It doesn't begin with big external changes, but with small internal truths. That feeling of not belonging in certain places, of feeling out of place in circles that only talk about things that don't touch the soul. That longing to be alone, not out of isolation, but because the noise outside no longer resonates with the inner silence you need. And that moment when you realize you can no longer do what you used to do, tolerate what you used to tolerate, pretend what you used to pretend. When the soul begins to burn, it consumes everything that is false. It pulls you back to what's essential. And what's essential almost always hurts before it's released. It hurts because it exposes us. It hurts because it separates us. It hurts because you start to lose things that once seemed important. Friendships, loves, habits, places. But what you're actually missing are layers, labels, characters. And this loss is a rebirth, because only those who have the courage to let go of death can be reborn. You've probably already noticed that there's something inside you that won't shut up, even when everything seems to be fine. It's that restlessness that visits you in the middle of the night, that urge to disappear and start over, that discomfort with one's own conformity. This is the call of the soul. She whispers. She burns. She doesn't scream, but she doesn't disappear either. And when you ignore it, your body feels it. Then comes the inexplicable tiredness, the anxiety that arises out of nowhere, the silent crying in the middle of the day. Because you can fool the world, but you can no longer fool yourself. The awakened soul becomes demanding, not with others, but with one's own truth. She no longer accepts lukewarm relationships, empty conversations, soulless promises. She can no longer be content with what only feeds her ego. She wants what nourishes, what transforms, what heals. And that's why along the way you'll seem difficult to many, because while others ask for lightness, you carry fire. While they expect distraction, you offer presence. While they pretend not to feel, you feel for everyone. But that's your role, not the one about pleasing, but the one to light up, to awaken consciences, to ignite silences, to ignite your own essence, even if it causes discomfort to those who still live in darkness. Rumi said that we are candles made to burn and illuminate at the same time, and you've already started to ignite what was stagnant. It has already begun to purify, even without knowing it, because the soul, when aligned with its own purpose, transforms even in silence. And the truth is, when they call you intense again, you won't shrink away anymore. You'll be grateful, because now you understand that intensity is clarity. It's a commitment to feeling. It is a living, vibrant spirituality that no longer accepts being disguised by conventions. You came to overflow, and those who overflow are not afraid to flood. Those who overflow don't ask themselves if it's too much, because he knows that his extra is exactly what the world needs, even if he doesn't know it yet. So if you feel that fire burning inside you, if you feel something pushing you to be more authentic, more present, more yourself, write it in the comments. My soul no longer accepts living halfway. And now that you've come this far, perhaps with a lighter or heavier heart, perhaps with teary eyes or a silent soul, it's time to look at yourself honestly. Not that raw, merciless honesty we were taught, but a sacred honesty, the kind that whispers, I recognize myself. Because yes, you are recognizing yourself, and this recognition is not small. It carries the weight of a lifetime where you needed to hide, to mold yourself, to diminish yourself so as not to bother anyone. You trained yourself to appear less intense, less profound, less sensitive, less everything, because the world seemed not to know what to do with someone like you. But time passed, the masks of others fell, and yours too. You can no longer pretend you don't feel. You can no longer force smiles in suffocating environments. You can no longer maintain relationships where you need to explain yourself all the time. The truth that pulsates within you is too great to be silenced. And now, at this point in the journey, there is no turning back. Because once the soul awakens, it doesn't go back to sleep. Once you see, you can no longer unsee. Once you hear yourself, ignoring your own voice becomes impossible. Your intensity has never been an exaggeration. It's your way of existing in the world with completeness. When you feel everything. When you love deeply. When you speak with your soul. And even if that scares others, that's what makes you who you are. Your love is not a problem, it's a gift. Your depth is not a burden, it's a beacon. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. It's the direct channel between you and your spirituality. And now what opens before you is no longer a request to be accepted. It's a choice to continue living by limiting yourself, or to finally allow yourself to live fully. And being whole is this. It's authorizing yourself. It's validating yourself. It's understanding that you no longer need to wait for others to approve of you, for others to stay, for others to recognize you, because you've already understood that those who can't see you don't deserve what you offer. You're not for everyone, and that's okay. You don't need to be. You only need to be for yourself, for those who can recognize your light even in your darkest moments, for those who don't run away when you show your pain, for those who stay, not out of convenience but out of connection. Perhaps now you are remembering all the times you kept silent so as not to lose someone, all the times you accepted little just to avoid being alone, all the times you pretended not to care, even when you were crumbling inside. And perhaps, in remembering this, a pain comes, a kind of mourning for yourself. But this pain doesn't need to be feared. It is the beginning of your healing. Rumi said that the wound is the place where the light enters. And now, your light is entering. Not because someone brought it, but because you yourself decided to light it. This is the ending that doesn't close, it's the one that opens. Because this path we're walking together doesn't end here. It continues within you, in your next steps, in your next choices. Now, every time you wonder if you're exaggerating, if you're being too much, if you're feeling too much, take a deep breath and remember, you are not too much. You are whole. And your soul deserves to be lived without censorship, without fear, without labels. You don't need to apologize for being true. You don't need to mold yourself to fit into a space that was made for the edited version of you. Your real version, intense, spiritual, sensitive, awakened, is the only one that needs to exist from now on. Because every time you deny yourself, you tell the world that your truth is not worthy. But when you embrace yourself, you open space for other women to free themselves as well. Your courage heals. Your presence transforms. Your awakening is collective, even if it seems lonely. And even though you are still surrounded by people who don't understand what you're going through, know this: you are not alone. Here, in this space, you are seen, you are felt, you are recognized, because there are others like you. Women who cry in silence, who feel strange, who have been called complicated, emotional, too intense, but who, little by little, are rediscovering who they truly are. And that is why I ask you now, not as a formality but as an act of affirmation, write here in the comments the phrase that seals this moment of your soul with the world. Write, I am not too much. I am whole. And feel what that phrase does to you. Because when a woman writes this, she's not just commenting on a video, she's reclaiming her own story. If you've stayed this far, it's because some part of your soul has been touched. And this doesn't happen by chance. Nothing awakens in us unless it's the right time. You heard every word, felt every silence, went through every layer with me. And that already says a lot about who you are. You are not seeking distraction. You are seeking truth, healing, presence. And that's precisely why this space exists. Here, intensity isn't an exaggeration. It's spirituality ablaze. It's a living soul remembering its own power. If this message resonated with you, if you felt something inside you ignite, then subscribe to the channel now, because this is just the beginning of a journey that needs to be walked with those who feel the same way you do. Women who no longer want to live half a life. Women who are ready to transform pain into wisdom, silence into strength, presence into a path. The next video is now appearing on the screen. Click and watch. It was made to further deepen what you started feeling today. You are not alone. The journey is only just beginning.